off when you were shot, Marama. You were first up because you were the most important person.
Not true, but yeah, yay.
And actually joining us as well, we should bring this in case you're going to jump in here. Jan Logie, hi.
Hi.
In studio as well. So all of us are here sort of having a bit of a chin wag. Yeah. It's a bit of an interesting rushy one because it's one of those funny things. It's actually classic Kiwi, isn't it? We've been talking around for 2 or 3 weeks and didn't finalise details until about 10:15 this morning that we were going to connect.
And still they've changed.
It's perfect. Hey, thanks for coming in. We just realised you are a third-time visitor to the Department of Conversation. That means, I think it's you and Rob Patman. You and Rob Patman are number
Awesome.
one at the moment.
That makes me old furniture, doesn't it?
and actually, are you the only one? I was going to say you might be the only one that's been in all 3 studios.
Proud. Oh, yes, I have.
Because you came when
Community.
we were... a Petri dish where we were upstairs.
Yep.
We were kind of floating. And then we had our proper big room. Oh, no, okay. So you were at Petri dish.
Yep.
And you were in my bedroom.
I was. Via Zoom, yes.
And now you're
I'm
here in the basement of my whare.
Yes.
So there we go. Hey, thank you. It's a real pleasure to have you in. And obviously, someone like yourself, co-leader of the Greens, and Jan, you as well, incredibly busy, if not busiest time of your lives would be, I imagine, the weeks leading up to the election. So getting pulled from Twix to Twain to give me a half hour or so, I really do appreciate it.
I'm going to just really say thank you to you, Pat, because you've had to run with these chaotic, empty, campaigny lives of ours. While we're sort of used to it, it's it's still not the easiest thing to get your head around things changing and things not happening and then all of a sudden happening. So well done. Thank you very much for having us both here this morning.
Well, it's probably one of the beauties of realising having a studio from home is fucking fantastic because I can just go, oh, okay, let's go. Let's do this and nice. And then we're good to go. Hey, I wanted to talk to you. I've been thinking about this as we've talked since we last chatted, and you explained to me why the Greens weren't in cabinet, and it was kind of a choice not to be in cabinet.
Yes.
But since then, we've had COVID, and I wonder, on reflection, would you, for COVID, have preferred to be in cabinet, sort of a bit more around the table?
I am so glad also that we've got Jan Logie here, who is in more of a sort of ministerial delegation-led position than even I am, and has some precise insights and experiences about what could and didn't and should and did happen. So my comment, and then I'll throw to Jan, is that what we have realised, it has been really hard, it has been really challenging to push some things through that we really wanted to achieve without that full sort of cabinet and ministerial warrant. But it has also been vitally important for us to maintain our independent political position.
Also, which has been more important? Has it been more important to be independent, or would it have been better to be closer to power?
And I'm looking over to Jan. I'll offer my personal political analysis first. Is that they just have both been vital.
Right.
And that in the first term of government as a smaller party, our political survival has absolutely depended on our political independence and our ability to agree to disagree. Otherwise, what is the point of us being in there if we don't show ourselves to be different? At the same time, it has been vital to show that we got things done with our ministerial positions as well as our non-ministerial MPs. We got some stuff done. So going into the negotiations with hopefully a strong party vote, our members have got a bit more to go on this time. But I did want to ask if Jan could talk to some stuff. Yeah.
Well, I think James got to be part of some of the cabinet conversations around COVID response.
That's true.
That there was a small group early on. And we have, through consultation mechanisms, managed to keep pushing the need for our response to be based in evidence, for us to make sure that the decisions were founded on good public health advice rather than prioritising politics, and that we were taking that strong role in making sure that our community organisations, as well as people on benefits, were able to get the resource they needed to get through lockdown. And they were some of kind of our areas of key focus. Were we involved in all of the conversations? definitely not. And I think it's pretty obvious that some of the decisions don't reflect the Greens kaupapa.
Like what?
I can give an example. For example, the Free Trade Targeted Training and Apprenticeship Fund, which was necessarily urgently erected through COVID-19 job losses, right?
Yep.
Tons of people losing jobs. So government rightfully said very quickly, we need to free up some trades and some training courses. And that happened very quickly. What we have seen now is that it is women who are bearing the brunt of the job losses, and it is Māori and Pacific women who are bearing the brunt of those job losses. And it is especially across the areas of female-dominated workforce demand. So it's retail, it's tourism, it's services, and so on. The courses, by and large, were mostly male-dominated workforce courses and apprenticeship opportunities.
Gotcha.
Julianne Genter, our Minister for Women, who I hope you get on one day, she pushed at the time, and because of her managed to include some public education services like public health, and I think it was youth work. However, for the most part, there is a skewed gender bias in the courses and training. Now, we need to both remove the barriers for all genders to be able to enter into all workforce demand, whether it's male-dominated or not, yes, and we need to proactively encourage that. But the reality is we also need to make sure a wider choice of courses and options and trainings are available. And that's an example of where a gender equity lens, I would also like to see a disability equity lens thrown across the courses could have been applied. And that's the work that we are calling for now.
I don't want to be contrarian at all, but it does make me think of that idea, you know, since the 80s we've been told girls can do anything.
And they can.
And they can. I agree with that. With so many females in my life. How could I not? But I do anyway. How do we... I mean, I agree that there are particular jobs that, digging ditches. Yes, of course, women can dig ditches, but men are bigger and stronger and find it easier to dig ditches. It's a silly example, but
though actually on that point is, I think that we can't pretend that those traditionally male-dominated jobs, just because that's where they're going to be jobs opening, are going to be available to women. But the reason for that is not women's physicality on a whole, because actually we come in a broad range. Lots of people are way strong. Lots of women are way stronger than
Valerie Adams.
All
three of us combined couldn't touch her strength.
But embedded, hardcore discrimination does exist in those industries that provide a barrier for women getting into them. And there's also cultures in a lot of those industries that make it unsafe at times for women in those jobs. Like there's cases around forestry where women, they've got men go to the loo anywhere while they're working. And for women, they may provide portaloo, but then that takes them off the job to be able to go to the loo, and then there's that sense of letting others down.
Okay, so that's a really interesting thing you've just said, and I don't want to get into, this is probably the wrong conversation 8 days out from an election or whatever. Maybe this is one for afterwards, but I acknowledge and can see exactly what you're saying. That's a really good example, but what's the solution for that in particular? Is it a portaloo at every tree?
Well, no, the solution is to be actually engaging women to work out what the solution is and having a commitment to that. Because the answers aren't immediately obvious, but unless you actually engage in trying to problem solve it, you won't get a solution.
It'll just remain the same.
And we can't pretend that it's going to happen magically.
Yeah,
is there not also a place, as I'm going to sound like a 50s dad now, is there not also a place where we kind of go, there's some places that guys are better at jobs, there's some places that girls are better at jobs?
I think that's really outdated thinking.
That's why I said 50s dad.
I think that's really outdated thinking because it subscribes to a narrow bias of who does what.
Yeah.
And so also, along with everything that Jan was saying, we need to understand that it's not about physical attributes. It's much broader than that. It's cultural. It's a lot of things. But also, there are a lot of other things our communities need us to do right now. For example, ECE, early childhood, educator assistants, teacher assistants, nurse assistants, pharmacy work, admin work, there are social work. There are so many other things that our country needs to revive our communities, that our communities need to, especially in the face of COVID. And so this is why, though, we have unfortunately had a bit of a narrow sort of take on what are the things we can quickly get up there when we can be broader than that. We can be much broader.
So that kind of does wrap me right back into my first question I was going to ask about this. If the question I asked, which actually was, I don't take contrarian opinion positions for the sake of it. I was just kind of thinking out loud there, which I acknowledge and already know the answer to. But if that is the case, if that's 50s thinking, then how does support for particular jobs become male dominated? Because if we don't think anymore that jobs should be, would be, could be male dominated, how do those jobs that we talked about at the start that were more male dominated, that got the support, why are they more male dominated? And doesn't it sounds like you're kind of saying both things, that women need this extra area, but actually women can do anything. So if they can do anything, what does it matter what jobs go up?
Well, because discrimination still exists, as we were just discussing, and that we haven't. Like the last time I looked, 9 out of the top 10 jobs women are most likely to do were the same as what they were in the 70s. So our social norms. So
let me just ask something. As a 50s dad, that says one of two things. It says either there is a job that the different sexes do better than another, or there's discrimination. So it's either one of those two things. And you guys are saying it's discrimination?
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah. And again, I also want to include that in that range of community need that I talked about, teachers, nurses, pharmacy, admin. We also, again, are very clear that all genders need to be a part of those workforces as well, absolutely. But there is a reality right now. So what that will mean that in the meantime, we will unfortunately see women who are bearing the brunt of the job losses discriminated against because of the choice and the range of options that are currently available.
I think there's this. Look, I love this conversation already because there's it's to me it's not cyclical. I'm not saying that like it's like I'm taking it lightly, but I think that there are so many conversations going on in society today that we haven't quite got the language to do clearly.
Yeah,
and it's almost like, let me give you a really blunt, terrible example. How we want to make sure that there is good representation of many people groups, whatever they might be, within the workforce. Yet we can also look back to a time where people like Martin Luther King says, "Judge me by the content of my character, not the colour of my skin." And I'm not saying there's a conflict there, but I don't know if we've quite worked out how those two things sit together perfectly. And I think that there's this, and I hear it in this conversation that it's not that you guys haven't worked out. I think as a society, we're still working on our language as to how we make this work. And I love it. I love it. It's great.
I also think there's a complexity around, so there's discrimination and also like the gender norms, like what we're saying that actually there's massive diversity and women are able to do everything. That's not every woman able to do everything or every man able to do everything. And it's not saying that those gender norms are not deeply limiting of what we think is possible. They still are incredibly active. Like I was a kid in the 70s, and if you went into the shops, the range of toys for kids was way less gendered than they are now. So like you go into like the warehouse, like there's aisles of pink. And then there's aisles of construction, transforming kind of, mechanically things that are for boys. It's way more hardcore now. And you can't separate those things from actually how we shape our opportunities in life.
But I wonder, again, this is a societal conversation. I wonder, are we allowing that narrative to dictate our beliefs around that, or are our beliefs dictating that narrative? Because I've got children now ranging from 11 to 16, right? There's nobody I know of my sort of age group who bought for presents and stuff for their children in the last 15 years who went, I'm going to go to the pink aisle because that's the girls' aisle. They just went, well,
Yeah.
I'll get this purple thing and this blue thing. So as a parent, even though that was set up by society,
Yeah.
as a parent, I didn't adhere to that. And nobody I know,
Sure.
nobody I know adhered to that. So I wonder, look, I have to I'll be honest and also say, maybe there's one or two who I haven't had a conversation with it about, but I don't know anyone that wouldn't be okay with a Barbie for their son or a truck for their daughter.
I've got staunch feminist mates with
She
kids.
really does.
I believe you.
It'd be a surprise,
I
right?
believe
Look at me. You wouldn't expect that. But and my godson, I gave him a purple watch one year, and he cried because he was saying to his mums, "Oh, I like it, but I'll be beaten up at school if I wear that."
Purple.
Purple.
Not even pink.
Like,
Just
not
purple.
even pink. Like,
Innocent little colour.
it's hardcore
It is
out there for
hardcore.
our kids. And that's
Yeah.
in,
I've-
the bloody PC liberal Wellington.
I've got, since we last were face to face,
Yeah.
I now have a 1.5-year-old mokopuna.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, I did well. Yes, I did all of that. Yes. My daughter went to buy some tracksuits, warm tracksuits for her only last week. And she came home and said she had to go to the boys' aisle because there was nothing available for girls that were suitable, that were the style that she wanted. And it was like, why are there boys and girls aisles? Why aren't they just clothes? Like, why in the girls' aisle, there was nothing that she wanted for her daughter that had the style that she needed, and she had to go and she was like, Mum, why aren't they just clothes for kids? Like, so it's still there. And it's so in answer to your question, it's a bit of both. It's self-reinforcing and self-perpetuating, and it goes round and around. My boy, who's now 12, as a kid, he loved high heels and lipstick and makeup because those are fun things, right? They're fun. He is the most rambunctious, sporty jock, in fact. Super boy as we might know the term. But as a kid, he just liked things because that's what kids do without the bias. And it wasn't heavily imposed on him as a baby. But he got to school and he dropped all of that.
Right.
Immediately, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I remember in the 70s, I got 3 older sisters dressing me as Wonder Woman. So, I've been there. There's photos like, sorry.
Explains a lot.
Here's a spit take. I'm just back on Marama while she spits that drink out.
Let me swallow the kombucha.
All right, there you gotcha. And I've got photos of me, some with those little square old 70s photos with the silver wrapped around here
got
for
those. Oh, that's funny, Pat.
But
That's
it is
funny.
also, I think that I fear that in society sometimes we go, the pressures of society, but there is this personal responsibility, not to sound like a far right winger now. but let me give you an example, like the example of there's a terrible image put out there for women to attain in things like women's magazines. But who buys the fucking magazines?
Yeah.
Women do. Stop buying them, and the image won't be there. So there is. I think you're right.
We got to be woke, Pat. We got to be woke.
Oh no, I don't want to be woke. But there is this cyclical thing, and I think that
absolutely right.
if no one adhered to these so-called society issues, like when you talk about had to go to the boys aisle, I kind of go, well, that sounds a bit dumb, but who cares? So they go to the aisle that the shop designates as boys, and they do what they want. And it seems stupid that a store would do that, because in my kind of mind, I go, they're cutting off half their customer base. I mean, it's a dumb business decision. But so they got the pants they wanted, they got it from there, and they didn't adhere to what the shop told them they should do.
But then it's when that point of when the kids get to school and the kids know what's in what aisle, and then they're singled out for wearing the clothes that are not of the... And I do think, like, I look at a lot of young ones and go into college now, they are so much more onto this. So there is... Like, there's an element of, I look at that stuff, and yet that generation I'm seeing are so much more kind of in tune around gender diversity and gender expression, however they want it to be, than other generations. So it's become possible despite those
becomes
shopping
possible.
aisles. So
It's a bit of both. So yes, those whose children have been granted or given the confidence from whatever their social environment has been, their family, whatever, those children who have been given the confidence to be able to stand in their own individual critical analysis, yes, other words, Wonder Woman costume, will be able to sort of forge their own path, but feel supported in that. It's similar, not the same, but similar to the individual responsibility. Yes, we all can play a part for climate change. We all can play a part, and so many of us want to, but we have to also change stuff at the industry and the production level as well. Yeah.
Hey, I'm sorry, this just shows my unprofessional nature as a kind of interviewer. We should probably talk about the election at some stage. I'm guessing. That old thing. I was going to say, though, you gave that example of your son in high heels and makeup. There's many stories out there. We've all got friends who have done it or heard of it. The opposite, where you've got the family that is like, there's no guns in this house. We don't have guns in this house. And by the time the son or whatever is 3 years old, everything, the pen, the stick, the whatever, they're all guns. And everything is choo, 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 choo. So... I get it. Hey, any non-negotiables for this upcoming election? Now, first of all, I'm worried for you guys a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Well, not I've said, from sitting from the outside in, it'd be quite interesting to see Labour get 50% plus, purely as a kind of. I look at it from almost a sociological experiment. What would a majority government look like in MMP today? Not that that's necessarily where my vote is or isn't going, but I think that would be interesting. So I look at a couple of polls from you guys and I go, "Oh, that feels close," but it always does for you guys. So well, is that right? It always kind of feels pretty close.
I'm not comfortable. Like, we're not resting. We're not resting on laurels. Jan and I were just talking about this in the car this morning. We're fighting hard for every vote. You better believe it. And and we're aware. Look, this is not new information. We're aware that we tend to poll higher than what we actually get on the day.
Oh, is it the other way
We're
around?
The opposite of New Zealand First. We're the opposite. So so we know this. So we're working hard, and in fact, we are down here. Here I go, plugging. We are down here for an event tonight at 7 p.m. at the Otago Museum at 7 p.m. to hold a big hui and discussion about our poverty action plan, a focus on making sure everyone has enough. You and I have talked about this stuff before.
Of course we have.
And so we know that we have got a job to make it clear what our bold plans are, that it is only the Greens who want to make sure that we are addressing the scale of challenges at the scale they need to be met. You cannot dilly down and tinker around with this climate change stuff, biodiversity protection and making sure everyone has enough. We cannot dilly down with it. We've got to do what is required. It's only the Greens who are offering that solution. And we're here to say that we will work productively with Labour in a Labour government, and that of course means a Prime Minister called Jacinda Ardern.
Yeah.
But we will push for stronger action on those sort of three broad priorities of ours. And that's what we are sort of, as people are already voting, as people are wondering what the polls are doing, that's what our challenge is right now.
So here's a question for you from an outsider looking in. Is it a better message to the public right now about green representation, green issues, green values, green policies? That's the reason you should be there. Or is it a better argument that if Labour ends up on 48%, you've got a right-wing government, we have to be there as a partner?
Have a go, Jen.
I reckon it depends on your audience, who you're talking to, actually. Like, if you were talking to me, it's the green values 100%. But there is that reality. If people are kind of mathematically minded, then and they're worried and don't want a national act government.
Because it does look like four parties after the election. That looks pretty likely.
Yeah, on the polls.
Yeah.
We're hoping.
Yeah.
That is us in there as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But that does require us getting over the 5% to make sure that
and safe. Comfortably enough over. So again, Jan's exactly right. I often say a party vote for the Greens is to ensure a stronger, more progressive Labour government, and is to totally keep Judith Collins away from power.
Yeah.
And so David Seymour. Like, a party vote for the Greens is a part of getting those green kaupapa green values at the heart of the next government.
But that means you're actively selling the partnership thing. And because I'm a mathematics person, And I've looked at a lot of stuff recently, and one of the things I realised, because I watched one of the One polls and I went, hang on, how does 6% of the vote equal 8% of the seats? And then I realised what happens is all those parties you don't make 5%.
Yeah.
They're excluded.
Yeah.
So it's actually, if you get 6%, but it's only out of 94% of the vote, then you get 8% of the vote. And so I'm thinking the beautiful thing about like the top party, the New Zealand, the NZPP, and the Conservatives, if they all get like 1 or 2%, this is the maths thing, right?
Yeah.
Every percent that a party gets under 5% is 0.5% less that Labor has to get a majority for to be in power.
Yep.
So in other words, if there's 4% of the vote, let's say that those parties make up 4%,
altogether,
then for Labor to be a majority government, they need 48% of the overall vote, which means if they get 47 and you guys get in there, it's an easy go. And so I'm like, wouldn't it be fascinating for the left if each of those parties got 4%? It's like the left would romp in because that. So actually, a vote for NZPP is actually a vote to help the left get elected as well. So that's the math I've worked out, because that's how it splits down. I've always said I don't think Labor will get majority. That's been my opinion. Although if any of those, not even minor parties, but minor parties get anything significant, maybe they will. So I think for a left-leaning, left-wing, whatever is the correct term these days, government, the Greens are essential to be there. So where I was going to go before we started this chat about that was
bottom lines.
Yeah, like let's say when you're in a position to negotiate your ministerial positions, do you have any non-negotiables to form a government?
Right now, no, because we need to see what the votes come in at.
Right.
We need to, and it also, as you've pointed out, depends on what everyone else gets. Just very quickly sidetrack, the polls are sort of also showing that people by and large don't want just one party in control of all the power. And that's part of our message as well. But what we are doing as the party, so that comes back to the members. So election happens, Saturday 18, election happens, see what comes in. Right now our members are discussing, and we're being very clear about what our top priorities are. Those are our poverty action plan, our clean energy plan, our homes for all plan, our clean farming plan, our thriving oceans plan, and our cleaner transport plan. Those, we are being very upfront with voters, are our top priorities. And we've also had some other sort of things come out, like reviewing the trade and free training and apprenticeship program, for example, and doubling sick leave and essential pay.
And redundancy.
And redundancy,
and
fair pay agreements.
Union membership.
There you go. Yeah, exactly.
So not non-negotiables, but certainly high priorities.
Top elections. Now, the members, once we see what we've got, we'll work out exactly what we go to the negotiation table with after we've seen what happens. We're all ready to be upfront and honest. I've been very happy to say we are already having those membership-led conversations based on the plans that we've put up, going through everything, seeing where we land. Those I can't reveal, but we are having those conversations.
Come on.
Nah, I can't.
Come on.
I know. Well, look, actually, everything in our plans, those 6 plans that are outlined, it's all there publicly for people to see.
Right.
Those are the things that we're all working through.
Right. What about Chloe in Central Auckland? What's going to happen there?
She's got a mighty chance, I tell you. The last polls have made it even more so a 3-way race. Up for anyone. Up for anyone, and she is running a heck of a grassroots campaign.
So not to cut you short, we've had this conversation before, Marama. Isn't this where you go to Labor and say, if you go to Labor and you say, Labor, if you want to guaranteed be in power next time, get your guys to vote for Chloe? Isn't this? I mean,
you want to have a go, Jen?
No, I know. Last time, and I've explained that you've basically said that it's
it's
your members. Your members would that's not the kaupapa you want to put out there. I'm kind of doing backroom deals, but actually.
Is that what I said?
Listen,
Good on me.
Let me put it back to you. And these are your words, not mine, right? Because I've asked Judith to come on for a chat. But keeping Judith and Seymour away from power, all you need to do, I think, is probably get Chloe a win, and then you're guaranteed to do that.
There is clear evidence, if we look around the world at Green parties or even progressive parties, power at any cost is not a long-term enduring plan either. power at any cost is actually not good for the people in the crises we are also trying to solve. So it's not about that. It's about an enduring movement. We know for a fact. Actually, Chloe can win this on her own blimmin' merit. Like, seriously. And no one is entitled to any seat. And Chloe is working hard to win this on her own merit.
So what we're saying is it's not official, but Labor supporters, if you're in Central Auckland, that might be.
Jacinda's been clear. I've been clear. There won't be a deal.
I've always said of the Greens and members of the Greens, and I think back to people like Sue Bradford and that, if there's one thing you always have to congratulate the Greens for is standing by what they believe, whether you agree or disagree with what they are, is standing by. And that decision you've made, standing by, I guess you got to be applauded for that. If it ends up costing you Parliament, then I guess that you've rolled your chips and that's the outcome.
Well, that's also making an assumption that Labor would go for it,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah. True.
I mean, the elections are, with one exception really, are parties putting ourselves, our platforms and our people out there for the public to decide.
Yeah.
And we all stand by. Like, obviously, we think our policies are the best, and Chris Hipkins thinks the Green Party's policies are the best. But by and large, the parties we want our people.
And at the moment, it seems that about 6.2% of the population think your policies are the best. So how does that become 9?
If we are running a campaign putting forward long-term thinking, good plans, and being clear about our priorities and confronting the big challenges for the world. That's what we're running our campaign on. Now, it is up to the people to decide whether we deserve to be in Parliament or not. That's up to the people. We're doing our darndest to bring people to us and to align people to what we are offering, and that's the best we can do.
Did you find it slightly amusing? Did you chuckle a bit when the Greens made a so-called $11 million mistake with the school, and the right said, right, get them out of Parliament? They made a $4 billion mistake in their projections, and it was just a clerical error. Was there a smirk after that? The thing came out.
No,
not at
all.
all.
There was no smirking. It was a really painful, bloody, difficult time.
I actually want to know, in all genuineness, why you apologised. Because it seems to me, and I'll be honest first of all, Trump sometimes gets a bit more of my attention than he should, and I had to look through it, but it looks like you gave a grant to a school to try something new in green energy, and then because you did that, got called out for something and had to apologise. Why did you actually? Why did you apologise? This seems to be co-popper for the Greens. What you're doing? What was the big deal?
Happy to have that conversation. Yes, you are right. That decision was born from a genuine desire to reduce our carbon emissions. Absolutely true. However, it went against the long-standing, strong fight, actually, that the Green Party has held for public education and for properly resourced public education, including the buildings. Now, actually...
Because it was private.
Because it was private,
right.
and in fact we have spoken out strongly about partnership in private schools. So it did absolutely.
So if there had been a public school, there would have been no back down.
Exactly. Yeah. Because we are
clear.
Staunch advocates for public education.
Look, that's clear. I don't want to rehash stuff and have people be able to go over, but I didn't quite get it. So that's it. Because sometimes I think, and it's when we're talking before about the language in society today that we haven't got it. I think sometimes people apologise too quickly, but I get that.
I can add to
I get that. I get what you're saying, and it's clear to me now.
What I do want to say, and thank you, Pat, but what I do want to say is, so James and I went to Taranaki. We apologised. We did a range of things. Actually, that was received more positively than I maybe hoped. And what I was hearing on the ground from a wide range of communities is people themselves didn't expect a politician to upfront and honestly apologise, and that was actually received well. So I think it worked out as best. It's not finished. We are now committed to several key points of decades of neglect of funding for public education and buildings. So we are now committed to being champions for that as well.
And it must seem that because you did do that, you did have that opportunity for this private, and that now there must be public opportunities jumping up and down saying, let's try it here and let's try it here, from the sort of initiative you were talking about.
Look, I visited schools and I had principals telling me that they couldn't sleep after that announcement was made. They were so writhing mad. not just at us. They themselves are smart enough, and they themselves acknowledge that they realise that the Greens were picking up on a wider systemic issue, that we were taking the brunt for things that, were much wider.
Right.
But the funding for the Green School just brought it to the surface in writhing anger. But
and
Jen,
just the other point around that is, most of our schools are just trying to get the holes in the roofs mended and the mould out of the walls, and like basic weather tightness and a safe environment for their kids. They're not even getting to that point of dreaming about beautiful green infrastructure, because it's bloody, like, it's shameful,
seriously,
the state of so many of our schools, and that's from generations of neglect.
I wonder if one of the good things about not being in cabinet for the last term is you are a bit freer to share your thoughts and views. Isn't Trump being a dick at the moment?
You did this to me last time. He did this to me last time. What did I do?
I think you agreed with me, and then we made a headline. Is that what we're aiming for? No, I think no. Okay, I'll be more serious.
It's the bit I was surprised by.
At the moment, yes.
Trump and COVID thing. I mean, I applaud New Zealand politicians, what we've done in general. Credit being given to like Jacinda and her team and the people around her, obviously making these, as to giving us. I mean, look, we're talking. You're travelling the country, and we're talking. We don't have to be
totally
distanced. None of those things are going on at the moment. We're safe, and it's great. So I look over there, what's going on there. I see that they've just announced in the UK reducing groups to no more than 6 people again, and I'm looking to Trump taking off his mask, coming home whilst being active with COVID. As a politician looking out to the political world, when America sneezes, well, now the world catches COVID. We used to say when America sneezes, the world catches a cold, but now it's when America sneezes, the world catches COVID. What as a politician do you do when you look to what's going on there? How do you reconcile? What are your thoughts around it?
I have thought about this. I am sad for the people of America, first and foremost, the people on the ground who bear the brunt of the chaos, and it even becomes a laughing matter for some people, but actually it's really serious on the ground for people who are bearing the brunt. And social media took his post of misinformation down, where he came out and said it's no worse than the flu out of hospital, and they took his post down because it is misinformation, and that's dangerous, quite frankly. He is a dangerous leader, and I can be really upfront about that, and I feel sorry for America's people.
Also, I would say for me, it goes beyond just Trump, and I think it's an indication of the fact that there hasn't, like, the money in their electoral system, how few voices there are that have a chance to be represented, and it's about the failure at a community level to build bridges between communities, and that's ultimately about inequality, and I think Trump is a direct result of that, and the removal of Trump won't solve those problems until inequality is addressed in America.
Is there something that we keep an eye on as when I say we, I mean the government, so we the people, politicians, do you keep an eye on, do you have your own delving into what's happening in America? It sounds silly, but I was about to say, is there any internal polling from New Zealand to predict what's happening? Or do you just sit back like the rest of us and go, I hope, fingers crossed, this is going to happen?
I think every individual politician will have a different answer. For me as co-leader, I've tried to keep a watch and be understanding of what's happening, but I'm often very local focused, very domestic focused, and have got enough on my plate, and feel that I'm actually unable often to keep as close of a watch as I would like to with what's happening around the world. And I have a particular stance and bias towards keeping track of grassroots and Indigenous and people of colour movements is where I focus my international attention to. But I think that, oh my goodness, I think I told you last time, I was on blimmin' record the night before the American elections saying there's no way Trump will win.
Yeah,
so don't trust me.
Yeah, we all were. Look, I think the way Biden wins is winning big on election day. I think if Biden doesn't win big on election day, then America's in trouble, because they will fiddle. What are they fiddling while Rome was burning? They'll fiddle the system. They'll bring the courts in. They'll figure out a way to keep them in.
Look,
so Biden has to win big on election day to win. I think.
That And may he win with all my heart and soul, but that in itself will not be a solution to the enduring inequality crisis and the lack of cohesion between peoples and communities. So I feel for you, America's people. Yeah.
Hey, look, we said 1:45. That's a couple of minutes away, according to my thing there.
Wow, that went.
Very quickly, cannabis, I think, is an easy solution for most people, although it doesn't seem like it's going to go through, according to the polls, which is terrifying. 50-50? All right.
Yeah.
I've actually started doing the opposite, and this is what I would encourage people to do. I've started, because I think it's such a slam dunk. It's already in our community. You know, let's make it healthier and safer.
Agree. Agree.
You know, it feels like those people who are doing the nope to dope thing at the moment are basically supporting the gangs. They're kind of going, well, let's not do it. So let's just leave all the money. I said to someone the other day, it's currently in our community. It's run by the gangs. The money is going into criminal activity, and it's not regulated. You know, and it could be dangerous. The flip side to that is it's regulated. We get tax off it, which we need at the moment. Yeah. It's safer, and it takes money out of criminal entities. What's the conversation about?
Also, a vital aspect for us, for the Greens, and for me in particular, is that the current cannabis legislation upholds the systemic racism within our law as well, and that for us is a real strong part.
Because
of
Māori in particular are more hard hit by it.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a no-brainer if it's me. But it's weird that it's 50-50, and it feels like if you're above 60, you're saying no. If you're sort of below 40,
even though
you're
80%
saying yes.
of the country have smoked at some stage.
But the one that I personally am still going is the euthanasia one at the moment. And I had a conversation with someone the other day talking about they were very pro for themselves, but they're like, there's already, and I'm going to butcher this a bit, there's already a community in New Zealand being euthanized, and that's part of the disabled sector. And she talked about, not cerebral palsy, kids. The word's just gone. You get the test when you're pregnant for kids with, the name's just popped out of my head. And if they show signs of it, they can be terminated because of it. They measure the rolls on the back of the neck. Sorry, the name's just jumped out of my head because I'm rushing to get you out by 5:2. And so she was like, even though I like it, for me, I'm going to be cautious of communities that might also already be suffering a bit in this area, although obviously abortion is different from what we're talking about. But that was the reason she was voting no. And I'm probably part of my Catholic upbringing, and part of watching my mum pass 2 years ago, and I'm really still unclear on that one. 60 seconds or so if you guys want to share on it, more than welcome.
Well, the Greens had a really long process within their party, and people on both sides, so people who had seen loved family members die in pain and wanted them to be able to have control, and people with disabilities and chronic illnesses who were saying they already felt as if they were a burden on society, and they were being told that, and that they really wanted to protect against any messaging that reinforced that, and they had a real concern around that, which is where we got to the point as a party of long process of negotiation to get to a diagnosis of a terminal illness with 6 months to live as that balance to enable that we are not sending any message that people are a burden and don't have a place in our society, that we're actively working against that, and also trying to enable people to have control of those last days. Yeah, that 6 month thing certainly makes it feel like it's there's a bit of a difference there, eh? Hey, look, guys, it's 1:45. It's been a blast. It's been one of the most get it organised and fun ones to do. And look, I think we actually covered off some interesting stuff in there as well, and hopefully people enjoyed it. Most importantly, as I enjoyed it. I mean, I'm the centre of this universe, so that's all that really matters.
Thank you for having us.
Marama Davidson, Jan Logie, thanks for coming in, and enjoy your sales. I can see out the window there at my back door. The sun has just come out. See what happens when you come into my house?
Thank you.
You come into my house and the weather's bad. You leave and the sun's shining, and enjoy your time at Ōtepoti.
Thank you. Kia ora.
Kia ora.